Julie Kay here. Are you suffering from the loss of someone you really loved? And have you ever just broken down in the middle of working or doing something else, thinking you were fine, and all of a sudden you just broke down crying hysterically or deeply, or all of a sudden you just a burst of anger, or just you were ridden with anxiety and you wondered what was going on? This today is what I'm going to talk about. They call it grief bursts. There's a name for it, grief bursts. And I've experienced it with the loss of my daughter and letting go of my grandkids, but I didn't know there was a name for it until more recently. So I want to share this with you to help you identify when this is happening to you, why, and what you can do about it, how you can handle this. And so, but just to let you know, just last night I experienced one and I hadn't for quite a while. I'm doing much better this holiday season than last year. That's for sure. But it doesn't mean I'm still not working through my grief. I will always be, but it does evolve over time. So last night I went on Facebook. I know most people love Facebook. I don't always like getting on it, but I went on it to check my notifications and ended up, of course, wishing my dad a happy birthday, although he's not avid on Facebook. He does know how to get on there. So I wanted to wish him a happy birthday, as well as, of course, I called him. And I saw the picture of my daughter, the one that I used for her service, and her laying in the grass. Just, of course, physically, she's beautiful. Her eyes were so beautiful. She's holding her fourth, newborn. And you can see his little arm there and part of his head. But just looking at her sad eyes, oh my gosh, it just immediately grabbed hold of me and I immediately started to cry. Pictures do tend to be hard for me at times. Pictures of her as a child were very helpful to see her happy. That helped me to remember the good times after she died. But seeing this picture of her, even though I've been talking about her story and I just shared my speech for the first time last week, it got a hold of me. So I'll talk about how I handled that as we go today. But I want you to realize a couple things about grief bursts. Okay, what the definition of them are, so you identify them, and how they're common, how they're normal and common, and should be accepted. They should be embraced. They're not saying you're crazy or anywhere different than anybody else who's grieving. So I want you to know that, and they're natural, and it's part of the grieving process. So the definition is like a sudden eruption of emotion, a burst of emotion, or a trigger, like an immersion is another word I'm calling it, an immersion of emotions, or an eruption is another word that I described it as. And by the way, part of the education of this I got through Gary Rowe, and he talked about it just yesterday. So that's why I thought I would share it today, especially with the holidays, so that I could share what was fresh on my mind that he shared and kind of add my own take to how I define it. But it is, and it's caused usually by some kind of a trigger. Now, if you know about trauma, the word trigger or triggers is a common thing, but there's triggers in grief too. So usually caused by a trigger by something. Okay, so the emotions can be anger, anxiety, guilt, extreme sadness, of course. It could be fear and probably other ones, anger too, I think I mentioned. So, but some of the things that can trigger you are thoughts. And I want to always bring everybody back whenever I share these things to the fact that a lot of us don't realize that our emotions come from our thoughts. Our emotions are not right or wrong, and they just are. And they are a symptom. The way I call it is they're a symptom of our thoughts, our thought life, our mindset, all kinds of things. But bottom line, all of our thoughts. So they're not right or wrong. They're not bad. they're a reflection of our thoughts, a reflection of our heart. So definitely they can be triggered by thought. They can be triggered by another person. They can be triggered by something that you hear, a word or a phrase through a person or through a video or any source. You know, we have all these sources that we get that now, right? It can be triggered by a song, a place, a picture, of course, like what I talked about. It can be anything visual. It can be auditory. It can be a smell. So really anything, any of the things, it's something that's going on around you in that moment that's triggering you. So it's usually in the moment, right? So it can be anything that triggers the senses. It can be smell based, anything, right? Taste. You know, you taste something that tastes just like what you know your loved one loved or something, or used to eat with your loved one. That, you know, it can be any of those things. So that is basically what a grief burst is. And it can't always be identified by a trigger, though. I do want to say that too. It's not always identified with a trigger. You may just not know where it came from. Okay. And it is common during the holidays, any time of the year, but it's going to more likely happen in the holidays. So we want to be mindful of that. With today is December 1st and Christmas is coming. I'm sure Thanksgiving people got triggered too. But, you know, so that's why I want to talk about it today. So with that, why do we have them? Okay, we have them basically because we're grieving. Okay. Another thing is if you're having them more often and they're really annoying you or, you know, upsetting you, or just, of course, they're not fun because you're feeling a lot of times very deep heart pain, and it's just like, it's uncontrollable. And maybe it goes on and on too. Maybe it's short, maybe it goes on and on. But it could be a sign that you're not working through your grief the way you need to be. Now, that doesn't mean either way they're going to happen. But if you're not working on your grief journey and you're not working on mourning and getting help on how to do that, how to walk through that, and you don't know how to, you're suppressing all of it, it's going to have to come out somewhere, you know. And one of the sayings is that if you don't express your grief, your body will express it for you. So if you don't deal with this stuff, more likely grief bursts are going to happen. And it could easily happen when you're not wanting it to happen, and maybe at work or when it's not a good timing. So we're going to talk about how you can deal with that briefly today. But I want you to understand that it's normal and natural and it's part of it. But basically, it's like Gary said, it's an emotional pressure valve inside of you, or a balloon that is getting more and more air as you have more triggers. And if you're not dealing with it, more air is given to that balloon. Eventually, it's going to burst. So it's giving a name to something that we go through. And literally, after I heard this teaching last night, boom, I'm like, well, now I'm going to call. I'm having a grief burst. And my husband came home and I was crying, and he, what's the matter? And I said, I'm having a grief burst. So now I can actually give a name to it. And I had another one this morning. So they can be surprising. They can be scary. They can be irritating. They can be, you know, very bad timing. Not something you're trying to go through at the time. And so on. It could be interruptive per se in your schedule, right? That you have these. So now how do we deal with them? The best thing to do to deal with them is to go with it, let it flow. Don't fight it. If at all possible at the time, depending on what you're doing and what's going on. If you're in the middle of a meeting, no, you probably can't do that, especially if it's an angry burst or any burst of that type, right? If you're, you know, I don't need to go on and on, but if it's a setting where it's just, ooh, this is not appropriate, you know, you're out to dinner or what have you. So if at all possible, you can let that flow. And if you're with a friend or somebody that is safe, that you can express what you're feeling, do it. You know, they may not know what in the world you're talking about, but it could help them in future things that they're going through. Or if they're also a griever too, which are usually the best friends to share it with, you know, they will understand. They may just not know that there's a name for it, like I didn't. So, you know, if at all possible, let that flow. Deep breathe. Write, if you can, sit down and pull out your notebook or your journal, or get a notebook if you don't have one. Write what you're feeling, or talk what you're feeling. Talk to God about what you're feeling. If you believe in him, and even if you don't believe in him, talk to him, because he's there and he loves you. So these are just a few things, but if it's not convenient, if you can deep breathe, and then get up and excuse yourself if you can for a moment, even if you have to go to the bathroom at a restaurant or something, excuse yourself from the conversation and go, in the bathroom or somewhere where you can, and just deep breathe and just calm down, and tell yourself that you're going to write about this later, or talk to your friend later about it. Don't just ignore it. Don't tell yourself it's bad, because it's not bad. Don't tell yourself, that it's just silly or anything of that sort. Okay. Accept it, embrace it, and tell yourself to go through it later. So deep breathing, I'm not going to go into a whole thing about that. I have done another video on that quite a while ago. I don't know which month, but it's breathing in slowly through your nose, out of your mouth. Some people teach it differently, but that's a common one. That's what works for me. In through your nose, out through your mouth. You can hold your breath. You can do it like in with a count of 7, out with a count of 8 or 4. There's different ways that people do it, but and the best thing to do is practice this on a daily basis or on a regular basis before you get into these situations, because this is so good for your body. It's so good for taking in more oxygen. It's so good because under stress, a lot of times we hold our breath or what have you. So it's so good to train your body to do this. But here's another way to help yourself with deep breathing is with grief bursts. Okay, so again, I'd love to talk to you more about that, but deep breathing can be very helpful, and especially if you need to just regain yourself in that moment. Now, last night when I experienced this, I was alone on my bed. I just let it flow. I let it flow, and it didn't last for a long, long time. Other times I've had it happen, and it did. It lasted like a long time. And maybe it took an hour before I was just okay again or calm again or whatever. Last night I let it flow for a few minutes, and then it passed. Other times I pull out my notebook and I know I have to write and I have to get it out. So this is just all a few things to talk about this. And so again, excuse yourself or make sure you try to deal with it later and write down things later if you can't do it at the time. But bring a notebook to work, and maybe you can do it on your lunchtime or, whatever. Just plan and be prepared for these things to happen. Don't be surprised. Just say, hey, it's going to happen at times. I probably won't know when or where, and it may be very inconvenient, but it's going to happen. So that is what I want to share with you. And I do have a couple verses, which I always do. And these verses are not at all to say not to process it, because I'm telling you to process this. You have to let it out. Okay, these are verses that in the midst of it, you can be thinking about and telling yourself, so that you don't go on and on about this, and so that you don't carry this on and just be negative for the rest of the day or the week, or become hopeless, become discouraged, because you don't have to become discouraged in this. You don't have to be consumed with it, but you do have to process it in order to not be consumed. So here's the verse, John 14:1. I love this. And this is my own turning this into a declaration, which is one thing I coach people on. I'm not letting my heart be troubled, stirred up. I choose to believe in God and also in Jesus. So it's turning to him and believing him to help you, allowing him to help you, knowing he's there for you, knowing he loves you, and that he'll never leave you or forsake you. So I'm not going to let my heart be troubled or stirred up. I choose to believe in God and also in Jesus. And then John 16:33, which is similar, Jesus says, in this world, you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. So this is the way I change it into a declaration. Jesus promised that in this world, I will have trouble. I will have distress. I will have sadness. I will have troubling experiences happen, yes, but also troubling feelings, troubling experiences within yourself. Okay. But he has overcome the world. So I take heart and I choose to be encouraged. Jesus wants me to be at peace. So I choose peace today. I choose peace today. Okay. And I write these all on index cards. I have some big ones and some normal sized ones. So, these are ones I quote daily. I have a lot of them, so I don't always quote all of them in one day. But something I would love to help you with is how to, help yourself and encourage yourself and ground yourself. So many good things when you speak good out of your mouth, and scripture is a great way to do it. So that's just so that you don't get stuck in it. You keep moving through your morning. So the song I want to share today is by Tasha Layton, and it's called Comfort and Joy. And I didn't know she had love. She's my favorite artist right now, but I didn't realize she had this song, and it came on the radio. So comfort and joy. God wants to give you comfort and joy, even in this season. And as Gary Rose says, these holidays will be different, especially if it's the first year, but even ongoing years. This holiday will be different, but it can still be good. You can still cause good things to happen in the holidays, even though it's very hard because you miss your loved one, and you probably are going to feel it even more during the holidays, depending on your situation and your story. So he wants to give you comfort and joy, and your loved one, even though you will continue to cry and you never know when you're going to cry or break down, you can still experience joy and happiness and laugh, and it's okay. And your loved one would, I'm sure, agree that they would want you to experience that and experience life again. So I'm Julie Kay, helping you find your way through grief and loss. Would love for you to check out my website, juliekettles.com, and get my free gift there, which is the foundation of my coaching. And so go get that freebie. We all like freebies at Christmas time. And again, it's Julie, JulieKettles.com. Signing off. Merry Christmas. I'm so sorry for your loss, and hope to see you next week for another one about the holidays and about how to handle our grief. Okay. God bless you, and see you next time.